Today marks the anniversary of one of the most horrific child abuse cases.
Brianna was bruised from head to toe, skull fractures, broken ribs, and there was evidence that she was raped.
A push today for lawmakers to take action to strengthen the penalties against child killers. Well, the House made quick work of the measure to expand baby Brianna's law.
Brianna Lopez was only 5 months old in Doña County when she was raped and beaten by her father, mother, and uncle back in 2002.
The case inspired the 2005 Baby Brianna law. Considered the worst child abuse case in New Mexico history, Baby Brianna changed child abuse laws.
Under the original Baby Brianna law, when someone is convicted of child abuse resulting in death in our state, they can go away for life only if the child is under the age of 12.
Baby Brianna died on July 19, 2002, when she was only 5 months old. Investigators say she had been beaten, bitten, raped, and thrown around like a football by her father and uncle.
Hey, I'm Serenity and this is my channel, and today I'm joined by Holland, Nova, and Pix, and welcome to year 2 of Halloween Hometown Horror Week 2022. This year we are going to be putting out 5 consecutive videos starting today, the 27th, all the way through the 31st on Halloween. Now, if you are new to my channel or you've never seen one of my hometown horror videos, I will get into what they are, but there are timestamps down below because I know I talk a lot in these intros, but this is one that I think you need to watch the full video, or at least if you're going to skip through, stop at the disclaimers and watch the disclaimers and the trigger warnings, because those are very important in this case. So today we are talking about baby Brianna, and this has to be one of the worst cases I've ever covered, so let's get into it. Hometown Horrors is a series on my channel. I grew up on true crime and I've always been fascinated by the nature versus nurture aspect, why people do what they do. So Hometown Horrors is based on true crime cases that have some sort of significance in my hometown and surrounding areas. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, sister city to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. There's this insane phenomenon where Ciudad Juarez, Mexico is actually one of the most dangerous cities in the whole world, often ranked in the top 3 on the yearly analysis list. And until 3 years ago, El Paso, Texas has always been one of the safest cities in America, often ranked in top 15. That was before an outsider with an extreme hate for Hispanics massacred 23 people. El Paso, Texas has yet to make it back onto that list. I think we actually are back on that list now, just not the same rank we were before. But with this series, I want to bring awareness that no matter how safe a city may be, there are always crimes being committed. As someone who grew up in the city, knows the ins and outs, who can tell you exactly where parts of crimes took place, I'm trying to bring that certain perspective to cases. As I said, El Paso was one of the safest cities for years, so there are only so many criminal cases I'd be able to cover before I ran out. Thus, I will also be covering cases from the surrounding areas, including Juarez, Mexico, Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is where the case today is based in, Horizon, Texas, Chaparral, New Mexico, and other surrounding areas that I have personally been to and am very familiar with, that I'm able to give an insider knowledge. Before we begin, I just want to give trigger warnings for domestic violence, physical violence, rape, severe child abuse, infant abuse, child rape, abusive parents, and honestly, we're talking about an infant who only lived to be 5 months old, who was tortured, raped, and severely abused from birth. This story, like I said, is one of the hardest I've ever covered. So if you can't stomach what I just said, or you think anything in that realm might harm your mental health, please stop watching. Put yourself first, and I'll see you at a later date with a different video. Maybe one of the next couple days videos you'll be more interested in. If I get any information wrong, please kindly let me know below. I try to get the following information as accurately as possible. However, I use multiple different sources, and if only one mentioned a certain detail but I was unable to verify it using another source, I left that detail out or went with the most commonly reported detail. So sources will all be linked down below. I tried to only use respective websites. If I'm looking off to the side to the camera at all, it's because I have my iPad right here where I have my script loaded. If I didn't have a script, I'd go off topic constantly. I apologize if it's in any inconvenience. Lastly, this video is an informational research study that I am sharing for academic entertainment reasons only. I mean absolutely no harm to anyone mentioned. So grab your blanket, this is actually my robe, and drinks and snacks, and let's begin. I want to talk about how you may have seen the case I'm about to cover all over TikTok recently. The 20th anniversary birthday of this victim in the case brought new attention through TikTok videos made on the crime, and all of that is great, but at the same time, not all the information in these TikTok videos were accurate, nor is everyone reporting the case from a humane, respectful place. A lot of them are actually doing it only sensationalizing the case, and that's not okay with me. With that being said, it was difficult for me to to find my usual sources. This case is over 20 years old, so I did have to use a couple backdated logs, I guess you would say. In hometown horror videos, as you may or may not know, I usually only use local news reports from my local news stations that I know personally and can trust. There was a lot of reports and blog posts on the story that I just didn't believe had the most accurate information, and I didn't use them. Researching this was kind of finding like a needle in a haystack. I wanted to report it as accurately as possible. There are also a few laws that were created as a result of this criminal trial we're going to be talking about that goes hand in hand with the horrific crime. So with that being said, I wanted to talk about how I found this case and everything about it. I have a 3-page document on a list of topics that I want to cover in Hometown Horrors that are categorized by these sources, local sources that I can trust, and the most urgent cases that I want to cover next. But this case I had never heard of before. My mother actually mentioned it in passing to me, and I did a quick Google search to see if it was something I wanted to talk about, and I was alarmed at what I discovered. This has to be the absolutely most ghastly and dreadful case I have ever researched, and I say that like I've been researching true crime cases for years, but this has to be the worst case I've ever researched. I've only can remember 2 cases in my whole life that I've like listened to on podcasts or TV that like give me chills and I can't finish listening to them and see what happens because it just grosses me out, and this would be the 3rd case because what happens is absolutely heartbreaking. I'm talking this case is probably even worse than the Women of Juarez femicide epidemic I covered a couple weeks back. We are talking about a severely abused infant, so out of respect for baby Brianna and me not believing and showing pictures of abused victims in my videos, I will only be using one photo of baby Brianna that we don't even know if it's actually her, but is the only photo that we have that doesn't show her post-mortem or bruised at all. It is actually believed that this photo that I'll be using is actually a photo of Brianna post-mortem, but the bruises were photoshopped out, so it looks like she's clear-skinned. Sadly, those photos are not hard to find. In this case is very important when it comes to the laws that were passed regarding the outcome of the trial, so we will be discussing those near the end of the video. As I mentioned earlier, just this year was the 20th anniversary of this case, and Brianna was born in 2002, which means she would have been 20 years old in February of 2022. That is saddening to hear because I personally just turned 20 like 2 weeks ago by the time you're watching this. So that means we are the same age. She should have never had to go through what she endured and the torture she went through in such a short life. Now, the last thing I want to mention before we begin is this case does take place in Las Cruces, New Mexico, only about an hour north of El Paso, Texas, my hometown. Las Cruces is actually a really nice place that I visit all the time. I was actually just there for my birthday, and it's saddening to know that such an evil case and crime took place in that city. This case is known as one of the most brutal cases of child abuse in Donna Ana County, New Mexico, and New Mexico in general. It may actually be one of the most brutal cases of child abuse ever in America. So, on Wednesday, February 14th, 2002, Valentine's Day, a tiny baby girl named Brianna Marie Lopez was born in Las Cruces, New Mexico, to parents, 19-year-old Stephanie Lopez and 21-year-old Andrew Walters. What should have been a very joyous occasion was anything but, being as only 5 months later, Brianna would be murdered in cold blood by her own father. Usually in these cases, I try to talk about the victim, their life, what they enjoyed doing, their family, and close relationships, but that is not the instance in this case at all. I searched everywhere about what those 5 months of Brianna's life were like, and I found pretty much nothing. So I don't even know if it was a one-day event that led to her death, but rather a 5-month-long stint of misery. I do know that to some degree, abuse was going on because those around Brianna, including her mother, father, uncle, and other close family members, partaked in the abuse. From ignoring the baby crying, to pinching the infant, slapping her, and even biting her. Brianna lived in a small 3-bedroom trailer near Las Cruces. Conflicting reports claim that the trailer was owned by Brianna's paternal grandmother. Others say that it was her maternal grandma. Also, who lived in the trailer has conflicting reports. Mother Stephanie and her twin brother Steven lived in the trailer along with Brianna's father Andrew. Some reports also claim that Brianna's paternal grandmother, Patricia Walters, and her partner lived in the trailer along with Brianna's infant 18-month-old brother lived in the trailer. So Brianna had an older brother too, and apparently another kid lived in the trailer trailer, which is Andrew, her father's little brother, who is only 8 years old, named Robert Jr. So keep that in mind. Along with her paternal uncle, Andrew's younger brother, 8-year-old Robert Walters Jr., Brianna, her infant brother, and her mother, Stephanie, her father, Andrew, and her uncle all shared one bedroom. Then on Thursday evening, July 18th, 2002, Brianna's parents and uncle got intoxicated in the trailer. Stephanie admitted to having a few beers before crashing for the evening. Then at some point during the night, Andrew and Steven decided to play a game with baby Brianna, where they would toss the 5-month-old infant in the air until her head banged against the ceiling and just let her fall straight to the floor. They did this at least 3 times. The pair admitted to authorities that Brianna was screaming and crying during the abuse, but they would just laugh at her and continue to play their game. The following morning, on July 19th, 2002, Stephanie woke up to a crying Brianna, noticing fresh cuts and bruises on her but chose to ignore it. Later that morning, Brianna needed a diaper change and her father, Andrew, was the one to change her dirty nappy. However, changing her diaper was not as cut as dry as it may seem. He wrapped a baby wipe around his finger and molested baby Brianna up the anus. This would not be the first time her father and also her uncle would rape and sodomize the infant. It was reported that this form of abuse had been going on since Brianna was only a few weeks old. And I do want to say that I'm not sure what kind of rape they're classifying in this case. I do know in America, rape does not just include penis penetration, which I hope that's not the case in this. Either way, I wouldn't put it past these people to harm the baby like this. We'll get into that more at the end, but I thought I would just mention it so you can keep that in mind. After the previous night of extreme abuse, followed by the following morning of abuse at the hands of her father, it was evidence that Brianna Lopez was on the verge of death. However, no one in the trailer house called an ambulance, checked the baby's wounds, or even just cared about the infant. At 11 a.m. on July 19th, 2002, an ambulance was called where Stephanie claimed Brianna had fallen from a high chair. But at 11:10 a.m., at only 5 months and 5 days old, Brianna Marie Lopez was pronounced deceased. Brianna was taken to Memorial Medical Center in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where medical staff worked on the deceased baby, who was in bad condition. It was at this point that an investigation began into the death of baby Brianna. Amy Orlando, the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Public Safety, who also worked in the prosecution of the 5 adults in Brianna's life, became involved in the investigation. The day of Brianna's death, actually, where Orlando realized this was one of the worst cases of child abuse she had ever seen. She was quoted saying the following: "We were getting the briefings, we heard that what the baby looked like, that there wasn't a part of her body that wasn't bruised. This was just pure hatred and torture that went on all night, and then, as we later learned, had been for most of her life. She had never been free of injury, and she had never lived a life free of pain." Amy Orlando and her team worked closely with the lead detective assigned to the case named Lindell Wright, who was a sheriff at the Donna Ana County Sheriff's Office for over 20 years. 18 of those years were actually working as a detective. Once Wright realized how badly abused baby Brianna had been, he instructed his deputies to separate Brianna's mother, father, and uncle, who were at the hospital, while he photographed baby Brianna's body post-mortem with other officers for evidence. It is then when he noticed how severe the abuse was. There were bruises all throughout her body, all in different stages of healing, along with multiple bite marks. The injuries were so horrific, Wright then interviewed Andrew Walters and Steven Lopez, who he described the pair as deceptive. Walters' answers and emotions did not fit what had happened to Brianna, nor did he seem distressed and was not asking if his daughter was okay. During more questionings at the sheriff's office, Walters told detectives that he woke up around 10 a.m. on July 19, 2002 and discovered that Brianna was not breathing, admitting that on July 18, 2002, he was drinking beer with Stephanie and Steven Lopez, and that he and Steven were playing a little rough with Brianna. What the hell does playing a little rough mean? We're talking about a 5-month-old baby. She can't walk. She can't talk. Hell, I don't even know if kids at that age can crawl. The only game that you can play with babies of that age is peekaboo or airplane when you're feeding them food. That's it. So there is no playing a little rough. That's abuse. And it's infuriating. It's not a full-grown adult you're playing football with. It's a baby. Walters admitted he was throwing baby Brianna into the air so she would purposefully hit the ceiling of the trailer and made sure she would drop to the floor when he missed her on purpose, throwing her 3 times to allow her to fall to the floor. He did nothing attempting to calm the screaming and crying baby, but rather he just kept throwing her in the air. Stephen Lopez also admitted during his interview that he had thrown Brianna too. When the pair were confronted with evidence that Brianna had been sexually abused, Walters became visibly upset, claiming to the detectives that he would not find any semen. Her father did suggest that he had penetrated Brianna while he changed a dirty diaper. Stephen Lopez initially denied sexually assaulting his niece, but later during questioning he said, "I can't remember. I don't remember." Finally, Stephen Lopez proceeded to talk about the number of beers he had consumed, and then said he could not remember starting a sex act with baby Brianna. But he remembers stopping because he realized what he was doing wrong, the court documents state. Stephanie Lopez meanwhile told detectives that Walters had thrown Brianna several days before the child's death, but she attributed some of Brianna's bruises to her rolling off the bed and the way she slept. She also said her 18-month-old son was responsible for biting Brianna. So you're telling me that deep, multiple bite wounds were done by an 18-month-old toddler? Okay. Medical examiners reported that Brianna's small body were riddled with bruises and injuries which indicated prolonged abuse. She had broken ribs, legs, broken arms, bleeding on the brain, and vaginal and anus laceration. Brianna was tortured every single day of her life and died without knowing love or compassion or care. The trial began in September 2003, where the district judge, Stephanie Bridgeforth, agreed to move the trial out from Donna Ana County due to extensive coverage on the case. Amy Orlando said the following about the trial: "At a courtroom that was completely backing those defendants. The reality was that she was still alone. They had killed her. They had put a cage over her gravesite so people couldn't go and put balloons or flowers. So they had isolated her in death, and now she was alone through the trial. It just broke your heart." During the trial, the prosecution, headed by Susana Martinez, the Donna Ana County district attorney, who funny enough from 2011 to 2019 was actually governor of New Mexico, argued that all 5 adults who lived in the trailer home had known of baby Brianna's abuse and allowed it to happen, failing to ever report it. The defense lawyers countered that each of their respective clients did not know how the injuries were inflicted on Brianna. The witnesses then testified, which included the ambulance dispatcher, the emergency room nurse who had tried to save Brianna's life. The recording of the 911 call from Stephanie was played out, during which she said that Brianna was not breathing and that she fell off the bed. The 911 operator explains how to perform CPR and check for a pulse, to which Stephanie replies with, "I can't feel anything." Nurse Yvonne Machette testified next for the prosecution, describing how Brianna came to the hospital with bite marks and bruises across her face, head, and body that were so extensive. She tried to resuscitate the infant, but it was already too late for Brianna. The nurse also talked about how before Stephanie was taken to the police station, she asked to see her daughter's body, where Stephanie held her body in her arms before repeatedly saying to her dead infant, "I'm so sorry." Afterwards, Stephanie asked if she could cover up Brianna's bruises and the rest of her body except for Brianna's eyes. Detective Ed Miranda also testified for the jury about an interview he had with Brianna's uncle, Stephen, following his arrest, telling the jury that Stephen had admitted to raping Brianna and throwing her up in the air and allowing her to come crashing down to the floor. He asked Stephen, "Did you have sex with baby Brianna?" To which Stephen replied with yes. When speaking about how he and Andy threw baby Brianna up in the air, he said, "We were just playing with her." The detective's testimony was followed by some forensic evidence. Homer Campbell, a forensic dentist, which I didn't even know forensic dentists existed, testified that the 15 bite marks dotted across baby Brianna's body had come from at least 2 different people. However, he could not identify who the teeth marks belonged to because they were not distinct enough. So, not Brianna's 18-month-old brother. He didn't do the bite marks. He didn't commit the bite marks, whatever you want to call it. Next, the crime lab analysis testified that the test indicated that blood which was found in Andrew's underwear had come from baby Brianna. The supervising medical examiner, Rebecca Irvine, testified that Brianna had suffered from a skull, arm, leg, and rib fractures, and that she had sustained extensive bruisings to her face, head, and genitalia areas. In prosecutor Susana Martinez's closing argument, she pointed out every single one of Brianna's injuries, and the jurors' faces had tears streaming down their eyes. The jury of 7 men and 5 women deliberated on the case for just 9 hours before reaching a verdict. All 5 family members were found guilty on varying charges. 20-year-old Stephanie Lopez, Brianna's mom, was convicted of negligent child abuse resulting in death and child abuse. She was found not guilty of intentionally child abuse and was sentenced to 27 years with possibility of parole and good behavior. 22-year-old Andrew Walters, Brianna's dad, was found guilty of intentional child abuse resulting in death, conspiracy conspiracy to commit child abuse resulting in death, first-degree criminal sexual penetration, and 2 counts of child abuse. He was sentenced to 63 years with the possibility of parole and good time. Stephen Lopez, Brianna's uncle, was found guilty of intentional child abuse resulting in death, conspiracy to commit child abuse resulting in death, and first-degree criminal sexual penetration. He was sentenced to 57 years with the possibility of parole and good time. Paternal grandmother Patricia Walters and paternal uncle Robert Walters were convicted of failing to report child abuse and later sentenced to 60 days in jail. So if I'm correct, Robert Walters was Andrew's brother, and he was the 5th adult to live in the trailer, and his son was Robert Jr., the 8-year-old living in the trailer. Both Brianna's 18-month-old brother and Robert Jr. were removed from the 5 adults as soon as the investigation into baby Brianna's death began, being as there were 2 children. In 2007, the convictions for Brianna's mother, father, and uncle were reinstated by the state's Supreme Court after they were overturned on an appeal in 2006. The appeals court had ruled that the defendants' constitutional rights to confront and cross-examine their accusers was violated when they were tried together. However, the Supreme Court ruled that the error was harmless as the defendants' convictions. The citizens of Las Cruces community paid for baby Brianna's casket, burial, and funeral. They claimed her body as their own, being as no one in her family ever would claim her body. Her gravesite became a memorial site, which was often decorated with dozens of flowers and children's toys. So that is the case and the trial revolving around baby Brianna's life. We're now going to go into legislation and updates in the case. In 2005, the governor of New Mexico at the time, Bill Richardson, signed the Baby Brianna's Bill, which made intentional child abuse resulting in death a Class A felony, which carries a mandatory sentence of 30 years in prison. But the 30-year sentence only applies to defendants convicted in cases which the child is younger than 13 years old. Then in 2017, the Baby Brianna's law extended to protect victims up to age 18. Every year, a community group known as the Baby Brianna Birthday Committee, which also goes hand in hand with the Baby Brianna Foundation, which serves meals once a month to those in need in the community of Albuquerque, New Mexico. They hold memorial birthday parties at Brianna's gravesite annually, leaving flowers and balloons and donating toys to those in need in Baby Brianna's honor. And they sing songs, have reflections, and prayer time. They remember her life and make sure no one ever forgets her. In September of 2014, Stephanie Renee Lopez was released from prison, having only served 13 years out of her 27-year sentence. Brianna Lopez, her daughter, would have been 14 years old at this time. She only served less than half of her sentence after being released on good behavior, after corrections officials had 5 independent auditors review Lopez's case file to ensure that she had served her full sentence. The state does not have the authority to alter the court-ordered sentence that permitted her release. Lopez had to serve 2 years of parole in another state through the Interstate Compact Agreement. Location of offenders in the Interstate Compact Agreement is confidential. She then had to follow all rules and requirements of her parole as well as state and federal laws. Now she's just out there in the world, on the streets in another state. We don't even know where she is. Possibly with another name, being as her parole ended in 2016. Governor Susana Martinez, the DA who put Stephanie Lopez behind bars, said the following: "She should not be walking the streets of this state or anywhere else. Brianna was relying on her mother, someone she should rely on the most, wasn't there for her, and was killed by other men who tortured and raped her. Her mom was nowhere to be found," Martinez said. Which I agree, no one who had any sort of involvement in this level of torture should see a day out of jail, point blank. In a way, Brianna's death may have ended her misery. Who's to say the abuse would have ever stopped, and if she would have ever made it to her 20th birthday? In the end, it's a positive that the community of Donna Ana County adopted Brianna as their own child. She is their child, she is their baby, and they make sure her birthday is celebrated every year and that no memory of her is ever forgotten. That is the case of baby Brianna, one of the most insane, gruesome child abuse cases in New Mexico's history and possibly in the United States. I can't believe this case just like lies under radars. No one talks about it. I just don't know what to say because this case actually kept me up for a couple nights. The amount of abuse this poor child went through. I have a 5-month-old dog. It's a dog, it's a puppy, but I've never imagined hitting the poor dog, let alone doing any of this that just happened. And that's a dog. An infant. Imagine an infant. I can't. I don't know what to say. Let me know down below if you think Stephanie Lopez should have gotten out of prison. It is also word on the street that Steven and Andrew may get out of prison early, which I hope not, because those two deserve to stay in jail for the rest of their lives. Let me know what your opinions are on this case below. It is kind of good to see that some good legislation came out of it, but it's crazy that this ever happened. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on that bell notification, because we have 4 more hometown horror videos, Halloween hometown horror videos coming to you in the next couple of days. This is the heaviest case in those, so the next couple of days should be lighter for you. The doggy picture of the day is Jinky, my 5-month-old husky, in honor of this video. Alright, love you, mean it, kisses, don't do anything stupid, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!